Hello, my name is Roshan and thank you for joining us on In20. If you're watching us on YouTube, do
that back forward and protect and pass the ball very, very simple. He is brilliant. If you put leg.
Do catch all the talking points on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook page. I'll be putting up one of what Danny said last week about Arsenal, about Saka and Rowe. It's all come true. Danny, you're a future teller, or rather a fortune teller. Can you have gotten it right many, many, many years ago when we mentioned the name or we spoke about the person known as Ravel Morrison? Everybody at United was talking about him. I came across his name earlier today because I was doing research for the show. That's what we do. No, we don't. But I came across his name, and he's on to his next club, his 12th club, and he's only 27 years old. He was playing over Netherlands. They've had an agreement where they have gone their separate ways. It's a shocker for a young man who was once touted to be even better than the likes of Paul Scholes.
Yeah, so that's, from the age of 18, that's more than a club a season, isn't it? That's ridiculous. Something is obviously wrong with that whole situation. We've seen it before with, I'm trying to think of players, the likes of maybe Mario Balotelli, that has several off the field issues, but he's got a lot more ability. That's the difference. The problem is when managers, coaches, whoever it might be, see a player with ability, there is always that, it's not arrogance, but there is always that one manager that has sort of the belief that I can change him. And I think obviously with, and we saw that with, Brendan Rodgers did it with obviously Mario Balotelli. It's like everybody else has tried. Some of the best managers in the world and coaches have tried to fix this problem. Yeah, but I'm going to be the one. I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to turn this rough diamond into something that's absolutely amazing and sparkly and, be absolutely pristine. And it's very, very difficult to do that. People can change. Of course they can. But they have to be willing to do that, and they have to really make sure that they do. I mean, Ravel Morrison was involved in England under 21s. He's been he's had an awful lot of help within this. I know when Gareth Southgate was England under 21 manager, helped him out, tried to guide him through that process. So he's had top coaches, top people that have tried to help him out throughout his career, and he just hasn't really heeded that advice.
Is it purely more of a problem for young British players than compared to the ones in Spain or Italy or wherever, whereby they're out and about, perhaps it's a problem with the drinking or the lifestyle or whatever it is that they can't really shake off? Because you tend to hear more of these stories that come out from England.
Well, I think you have to go back sort of socially and systemically, really, to go way back. When you talk about sort of the drinking culture, it hasn't really happened. It never really happened in European countries because it's a completely different culture. You go out for dinner, you have a glass or two of wine, with your meal. You have a drink. Even if you're a child, you're involved in that in and around the family. Obviously, the British culture was very much like, let's get as much alcohol down as possible in the shortest possible space of time. And of course, and that leads on. And this is, over the course of generations, So, the idea is when if you're British, you go out to get drunk. That's for a lot of people. That doesn't really happen in Europe and hasn't done for a long, long time. It's not sort of socially or as socially acceptable. So there's part of that, it's upbringing, it's culture, all these types of things play a huge part in it and a huge role. Too much too soon. Obviously we know that English footballers have been given, hugely inflated wages at a very, very young age. And if you don't come from money and if you don't understand how to deal with that money, it's very, very difficult. It's often when we see in this country lottery winners, winning these huge amounts of money. It's incredible. It's life-changing. But they can't handle that situation. To go from having almost from not a lot and almost nothing to have everything you want is actually quite a difficult transition to make. And yes, everybody wants that, but it does have its challenges, within that, to go from one extreme to the other in whatever part of life that is never easy and takes an awful lot of degree of control and a lot of help. And if you don't get that help, you can go off the rails, and we've seen that many times with footballers.
You mentioned that Jimmy Vardy was a good case. He's come out and said that he didn't, he couldn't handle the amount of money he was making. He was out and about. He was spoken to by some of the people at Leicester, and he got his act together. If you don't mind me asking, did that thing ever happen to you during your career as a young lad coming through the ranks?
No, I was always the tightest man on the planet. As you will know, even though I have bought you a beverage or two when been over in Malaysia. No, I mean, again, it was my upbringing. I was brought up with the value of money, to respect money, and I was never a great player. So everything that I did, I had to work incredibly hard for. I had to earn every single penny. Contracts weren't thrown at me. Contracts weren't offered to me, on a plate. I had to earn them. I was never one of the best players in the youth team or the reserves or whatever it might be. So, I was very, very aware of that. And again, it was about upbringing. I grew up with, my nan was a huge influence on me. I used to pick her up and take her to the supermarket, and she'd be there with her pension, and her choice would be, do I buy the supermarket own brand that is really cheap and tastes a bit nasty? Or, do I go for the regular brands that obviously are maybe twice expensive, but obviously nicer? And often she would have to, because didn't have the finances to go for the cheaper stuff. And a lot of that that stuck with me a lot throughout my career. And I look at luxury, I'm a little bit different maybe. I look at luxuries in life. And I had some good coaches that helped me along the way, and some good senior pros around. Get your house looked after, get a roof over your head first and foremost. That is the most important thing, because if it goes wrong, you've got a roof over your head. You can buy expensive things, but make sure they are value for money. Don't just throw it away, because it's, someone said, you don't get rich by giving it away. That is for sure. So, again, there are lots of different things that come into this, and maybe I was lucky within that. And my nan had obviously been through the Second World War, and you think what those people had to go through, in terms of hardships, and so I said she was a big influence on me. But a lot of people don't have that, so you need friends, you need closer family, and it's not easy at times, and that's where clubs and coaches have to take maybe a little bit more responsibility at times.
So who takes responsibility for Mesut Ozil? Because he's on a lot of money. Is it £350,000 a week? He's been told that he'll never play for Arsenal indirectly. So why hasn't any other club come in? There have been approaches, there have been talks, but no concrete steps from any of these clubs in or out of England that want Mesut Ozil, or even for a fact that he has never mentioned that, hey, I would like, to go play some football on a regular basis. What is it with Ozil? Are we making excuses for him?
He doesn't need to go, does he? Simple as that. You just said he's on £350,000 a week. That's nearly £1 million a month. And you get to that point. He's won the World Cup. He's achieved probably pretty much everything in football that he needs to achieve. From his perspective. Where's he going to go now? Is he going to go somewhere and win the Champions League? Probably unlikely at this stage. So he's going to go and play for fun and go and play for enjoyment. Now you have to write that off against the fact. Do you then flip that around and say, okay, I'll go and play for fun, but I'm going to give up 2/3 of my wages? That actually I'm going to use. What is he now? Early 30s.
He's still quite young,
Well, but he might have 60 years of life worth of living. That's a long time that he's got to look after. Within that, we've seen the stuff that he's done for charity. We've seen the stuff that obviously he wants to do for his family and provide, going down maybe through the generations and investing. He might have big investments that he's, guaranteed that money for. He doesn't have to give that money up in any way, shape or form. And unless somebody comes to him and says, look, here's the same money, then why should he leave? Everyone says, "Oh, you have to play football." Let's say he's got two seasons of football, to play left at a decent level. Let's say that's what it is. Or and he just goes, you know what, I'm going to go and play for fun, but because of that, I'm going to write off 30 years of money that will look after me for the next 30 years. It's not going to happen. Never in a million years. And people always say, "Oh, well, he's got enough." Well, you live to your means, you budget for your means, you plan for your future off those contracts. So no one in their right mind is just going to rip that money up and say, actually, you know what, I don't want it.
So is he an easy scapegoat for people in the media having a go at him, or is he just being a very smart person, taking care of himself? And you know what? I mean, or perhaps is it because of us? We love to play football, or we would love to have played football at his level and accomplish whatever he did. And you just see him sitting down there doing nothing.
And that's what it comes down to. I think the money always changes people's opinions. It takes people off what is actually sort of right. If he was earning £5,000 a week, would we be having a go at him? No, we wouldn't. No. Simple as that. Everyone would just go, okay, that's fine. That's acceptable. So where does that number suddenly change? Is it £10,000 a week? Is it £20,000 a week? Is it £50,000 a week? Why does it suddenly, one amount change from the other? It shouldn't make any difference. The decision is his to make. He's earned that contract. Arsenal gave him that contract. He didn't put a gun to their head and say, look, you have to give me this contract. If not, this is going to happen. They willingly gave him that contract. It was guaranteed. It's 5 years, whatever it was at the time. And he's thinking, right, okay, I've got to the point where I've earned this deal. Am I now going to write it off? No, I'm not. It's like if someone said to you, Roshan, you've got a huge contract with a TV company for 5 years. After a year, they go, you know what? You're not really what we want anymore. You can't work for anybody else, but so you have to do nothing for the next 4 years, but we're going to pay you. Would you go, you know what, I'll write that 4 years money off and I'll go and work for free for somebody else? No, you would not. Never in a million years would you do that. It's just not going to happen. And this is the problem. Money does change people's opinion, and the sums of money are so extreme, are so extravagant that they really slant people's opinions.
So is it safe to say that perhaps if you look at it, in a weird way, Arsenal are using Mesut Ozil against himself, and at the same time, they're protecting themselves. Like, he doesn't want to go. He wants the money.
I've seen this. I've seen this all the time. I had it a little bit when I was at Manchester City, and also when I was at Leeds. People are saying, "Look, you have to go. You need to go and play football. You have to play football. You can't sit on the bench. You can't sit in, just be a squad member. No, you're too good for that." Well, then give me the money that you owe me and I'll leave. Simple as that. It's not a difficult question. Ozil will say to Arsenal, look, you've got a choice. If you give me the money that you owe me, then I'll go. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
What clubs try and do is force you out. They try and portray you in a bad light. They try and make you look bad. I had it with, it happened to David Batty at Leeds, where they said, look, you are not going to play for this club anymore. Absolute club legend. Was told, we don't want you to train with the first team. We don't want you anywhere near the first team. We don't want you anywhere near the reserves. He said, right, okay, what do I have to do? They just said, well, okay, you have to come in training. He said, right, okay, can I come in training at 7:00 every morning? I'll do my work 7 till 9 and I'll be gone before the first team are in, before the reserve. And they went, yeah, that's fine. So he used to come in, do his own 2-hour session in the gym and go home. He worked to rule because he was, he wasn't going to go and play football after that. It was his last sort of, he was going to retire anyhow. So he just worked a rule and said, look, I will do everything that you want me to do. You tell me to come in at this time, I will come in at that time. You tell me to do this, I will do it. So you can't fight. You can't do anything about it. I'm just going to do as I'm told, toe the party line. If you don't want me here at all, just give me my money. And then of course, you get this standoff. There has to be a point where Arsenal say, look, we're going to have to pay this guy for another 3 years, whatever it is. There's nothing we can. So we might as well offer him at least half his money. And then if he can get half his money somewhere else, we just get him out. And it's no longer then our problem. And so a deal has to be done somewhere along the line. Arsenal made the mistake in the first place of giving him a contract that was beyond their means and was ridiculous. So it's Arsenal's fault, not Mesut Ozil's fault.
So if Arsenal made an error in judgment, will Liverpool make an error in judgment by not bringing in a centre-back during this transfer window?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, though, for Liverpool to be able to do that because you're thinking, well, who do they bring in who's available? who's going to want to come in knowing that, the moment that Van Dijk comes back, that you're out. That they might have to look at Premier League players that maybe aren't playing at other clubs. But then are they good enough, to step in to that Liverpool side? So the dilemma that Jurgen Klopp has is finding someone that is good enough, that is possibly going to have to contend with playing second fiddle, third fiddle, when all these players come back from injury. And that's quite a difficult find. That's not an easy... It's like the Kane situation at Tottenham, trying to find a backup striker that is good enough, that knows full well that actually when Harry Kane's fit, you ain't going to play.
But is there any name you can just drop right now in the Premier League who could be like, it is an opportunity to go play with the Premier League champions. There could be something there for a young player, and then if it doesn't work, you can always move on.
Well, I suppose that the sort of players that you're looking at now would be sort of like Nathan Ake at Manchester City, who's gone there and it hasn't worked out. Obviously John Stones has improved, Diaz has come in, Emerick Laporte is there. Are City going to let Nathan Ake go to Liverpool? No, they're not. Not going to happen. It's that sort of player. Maybe someone with a swollen squad, because you need. You talk about Champions League and pushing for Premier League titles, so that player has to be of a certain quality. But for some reason, if he is that quality, why is he not playing at the club that he's playing at? So it's a difficult situation. If not, you're going back to young players that Liverpool have thrown in recent months. So it's easy to say yes, go out and buy a centre back, but who do you buy? Who is out there of that quality? You only want to bring in better than what you've got, and that's a difficulty at the moment, I think, for Liverpool.
Okay, we go back to what you just said in terms of playing the youngsters. They've I wouldn't say they've gotten away with it so far, but they're still, top of the Premier League, going to be challenging for the title. But sooner or later, these kids are going to make mistakes. And then you're going to go back and say it's come back to haunt them, etc., etc. So if you were Jurgen Klopp, would you spend money on someone, as you put it, who's not good enough to start for a big club, but just good enough to be a stopgap measure?
I think there would be possibly to buy somebody, a senior player with experience, maybe sort of coming towards the end of their career. That
like a Cavani for United.
Yeah, sort of maybe a Johnny Evans type figure. Leicester aren't going to let Johnny Evans go, but that sort of player that has been around, seen it, done it. That is just going to be a good, steady, 6.5, 7 out of 10 every single week. It is not going to make too many mistakes, but understands what it's like to be in big games. And that type of player, that's the sort of player that they need. Someone with a lot of experience that can help the youngsters, in those games, not just in the games, but also in training, can bring on those young players as well, and help teach them, the mentality of what it's like. So, but again, it's got to find that player, and then you've got to get him out of the club, without paying over the odds for him. So it's and with everything else that's going on in the world at the moment, it's certainly not easy.
Danny, it's been an absolute pleasure. I believe you're in lockdown in the UK.
We're in lockdown. We're in a foot of snow lockdown at the moment. There's not a lot happening, but it's FA Cup weekend over here. Some great shocks so far, and I have to say, I just want to congratulate Chorley Town into the next round, non-league, into the fourth round. Yes, they beat what was a weakened Derby because of all the issues, but who cares? Chorley Town are in the next round of the FA Cup, a non-league team in the fourth round. Let's hope they get a massive draw when it gets pulled out of the hat.
And that turns into money, right? We got 1 minute, so a draw like that, if it's against a big club, the money is fantastic for them, correct?
Yeah, it's not as good as it was because I think the bonuses obviously have been cut because of COVID and no fans and everything else. But they're in that TV money. Obviously, they will get some of that. They won't obviously get the crowds in. But for a club like Chorley Town, this cup run would have probably secured their future for the next 10 years. Wow. And that's how important it is. Through this, a £250,000 sustains their football club for a very, very long time. So it's brilliant. And again, who knows today? Marine versus Jose. Again, could be a big shock.
Yeah, good call, Danny. And it's funny how you say the disparity between the rich clubs, the Premier League, and the the teams in the lower leagues. It's so vast. But I'll tell you what, my friend, the distance between us is vast. But thanks to our virtual friendship now, the show will go on. I'll see you next week.
It's like our wages, Roshan. Yours are up there, and mine are just down there.
Oh, if that was only true. I love you, Danny Mills. I shall talk to you next week. Stay safe, and I shall see you soon.
See you soon.